Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thank you for listening to this segment, which is an excerpt from Speech in the Silence, the official podcast of Blazing Star Oasis in the San Francisco Bay Area, California. Speech in the Silence is a monthly program offering lectures, music, interviews, readings, announcements, and news. See the comments section on this video for a link to the complete program where this segment was first heard. Visit speechinthesilence.com to subscribe to the podcast to hear new programming as soon as it is available. Be sure to visit us on the web at speechinthesilence.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook at Speech in the Silence. You may contact us at thelemapodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Love is the law. Love under will.
Silence your cell phones. So here we are back in Austin, Texas, the valley of our host, Scarlet Woman Lodge. Some of you may remember that this is the place where I received my 10th degree 19 and a half years ago. Anyway, I think this is kind of neat that it's back here in Austin for the 10th biennial national conference of our U.S. Grand Lodge. So our theme for this year is Fire of Motion, taken from the second collect of the Gnostic Mass of the Lord, upon which Brother David Hill expounded so well last night. The context of this theme, as explained on the NOTOCON X website, involved manifesting the Law of Thelema in our daily lives, especially in the context of living in a part of the country where conservative Christianity still plays a dominant role in society. I would like to expand on this a little by talking about manifesting the law in the context of another pervasive aspect of our society, democracy. No applause. So, as some of you may know, the United States of America is a large, well-established democratic republic. Democracy is a core, foundational aspect of American culture. It is not, however, a core fundamental value of Thelema. Crowley's opinion of democracy is summarized quite succinctly in Book 194. The principle of popular election is a fatal folly. Its results are visible in every so-called democracy. The elected man is always the mediocrity. He is the safe man, the sound man, the man who displeases the majority less than any other, and therefore never the genius, the man of progress and illumination. You'll vote for that, right? At this point, I'm afraid I can't resist also tossing in a couple of definitions from Ambrose Bierce's Devil's Dictionary. Rabble. In a republic, those who exercise a supreme authority, tempered by fraudulent elections. The rabble is like the sacred simorg of Arabian fable, omnipotent on condition that it do nothing. The word is aristocrates and has no exact equivalent in our tongue, but means as nearly as may be soaring swine. And here's another one, referendum, noun. A law for submission of proposed legislation to a popular vote to learn the nonsensus of public opinion. Anyhow. Democratic elections have always been basically, to continue on in the same cynical vein, democratic elections have always been basically a contest of propaganda, and thus subject to gaming for truly fabulous prizes. The ability to craft laws in your own favor promises great wealth to the most skillful and unscrupulous players, so it's always the money people who have the most interest in playing the game. And the rules of the game are to get votes for your side and take them away from the other side, by all means available. including appeals to sentimentality, irrational fear, twisting the facts, and outright lying, and even physical intimidation. A system like this ultimately has to devolve through a process of attrition and assimilation into a binary system of one powerful coalition against another, locked in perpetual combat, each claiming to represent truth and justice, but each in fact representing small groups of powerful individuals and corporations playing an endless game of chess with us as the pieces on the game board. Now, an exception to this rule might come along occasionally. I've heard a lot of Thelemites arguing about which political party here in the U.S. is more Thelemic than the other. Just going to pause for a second here and let you wonder what I'm going to say next. Actually, I think it's a pretty silly question. Political parties are artifacts of a system of popular democracy, which Crowley decried, and they're both really just huge propaganda engines designed to eternally bash away at each other like giant gladiator battle bots because the people love conflict. Now, I'm not saying that democratic politics is unimportant and should be ignored. It's part of our world here in modern-day America, and so we need to make the best of it. And I'm absolutely not one of those people who will tell you that voting is a waste of time. Elected officials constantly make decisions that affect you and your friends in significant ways. And so long as you have the ability to vote, I suggest that you need to use it. Otherwise, you're ceding what little political power you actually have to others. You know, more and more of evangelical Christians are seeking elected offices and winning. You know, especially here, the kinds of effects these people can have on your daily lives. However, don't let yourselves get shanghaied into, sleazy campaign steamers by scare tactics, superstition, sentimentality, and vague promises of economic advantage. Hold on to your own vision and principles and vote them. If you can find candidates who actually advocate your principles, support them. Perhaps more importantly, actively oppose candidates who espouse views and policies that are inimical to your principles. Heck, if you have the energy and the context, maybe you should consider being a candidate yourself for some local office. Seriously. And if you want to support Thelemic principles in a political way, I suggest that you use Liber Oz as your guide, not the phony, intentionally divisive celebrity culture pseudo-issues cooked up by the political parties and their servants in the media. Speaking of Liber Oz, I have heard some say that these are the rights we claim for ourselves as Thelemites. Yes and no. Sure, we claim them, but that's because we assert that these rights exist for all humanity. It isn't enough to enjoy and guard these rights for members of our little in-group. If we remain silent while these rights are being denied to anyone, then we are not really being true to our principles. Recall that we oppose tyranny, which is the use of political or economic power in a cruel, unjust, or oppressive way. We are against oppression, which is the deprivation of any minority group or even an entire people or sex of their human rights. And we are against superstition, which people understand in different ways, but which I personally understand as the imposition of unscientific or pseudoscientific beliefs to gain and hold on to political or economic power. In chapter 73 of Magic Without Tears, we find Crowley himself explaining how racism and classism are both rooted in fear and how they bring out the worst in people. And he's right. We need to be extremely wary of groupthink, mob rule, conventional morality, and all sorts of jingoistic bandwagon crusades. One of our most cherished principles as Thelemites is the sovereignty of the individual within society. In his essay, The Scientific Solution to the Problem of Government, Crowley emphasizes that the absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will. But, practically speaking, our nature as human animals is to cluster into groups and divide humanity into insiders and outsiders. And these groups do tend to act collectively in the interest of their members, especially when under threat. It would be foolish to be opposed to this natural tendency. It would be like being opposed to thumbs, but it would be equally foolish to ignore it or to pretend that it doesn't happen or to try to wish it away. We see it everywhere, even among ourselves, within our own order. Really, the problem comes when this tendency blinds us to the individuality of all the insiders and outsiders in our world, and to our own individuality apart from any group context. Every individual human being needs light, life, love, and liberty, and has a right to the liberties described in Liber Oz. Furthermore, every human being has a right to be recognized as a human being, a star, with a true will, with all the attendant rights, and not dismissed merely as an outsider. Those with initiative, dedication, resourcefulness, and genius certainly should be allowed to freely enjoy the fruits of their labors, and may also deserve a certain elevation of privilege if their labors also serve humanity. But these fundamental rights that underpin the ability to freely be oneself and do one's will are for everyone who does not reject them. They are not market commodities to be cornered through cleverness or family connections, either to keep to yourself or dole out selectively to your chosen and preferred. And if we stand idly by as other sovereign individuals have their basic rights eroded or torn away against their wills because of their group classification, their skin color, their gender, their ethnicity, their nationality, their preference in love, their economic status, their religion of their parents, even their IQ, then we are guilty of hypocrisy. Everyone has their will to discover and do. The only ones who deserve abrogation of these basic rights are those who would deny them themselves. Thus, if we are to honorably claim these rights for ourselves, we must affirm their universality. Now, this puts us in a peculiar position that many of us will find uncomfortable, because we live and participate in a culture that, through centuries of structuralization based on unscientific and pseudoscientific notions, has internalized and institutionalized discriminatory biases based on race, gender, ethnicity, economic status, and a host of other arbitrary distinctions. And many, if not most of us here, happen to be on the winning side of those biases, whether we like it or not. You don't have to be a bigot to benefit from institutionalized prejudice. And when you do so benefit without protest or even awareness of it, then you are a tacit participant in an oppressive system. Opposing racial and sexual prejudice is a Thelemic value. Even for white, heterosexual, middle-class men like me. Even if we have to summon the courage to confront our own fears of losing the automatic social privileges we have become accustomed to as societal insiders. The law is for all. Promulgation is not the same thing as recruitment or publicity. It is not enough to get new folks to Minerval or to the Gnostic Mass. Promulgation is not selling more copies, not just selling more copies of Crowley books, wearing Thelemic jewelry and clothing, and using our conventional greetings and daily rituals. Promulgation, which is a magical act, must include the active advocacy of fundamental Thelemic values and principles. In the world, the rights of man. All men, all women. Within our order, peace, tolerance, truth, fraternity, harmony, rejoicing in each other's differences, setting an example for newcomers. How can we act effectively to establish the law of Thelema in the world if we do not have our own house in order? If we are tied up internally with our own factionalism, petty power struggles, and overblown controversies, then how can we ever be a force for positive change in the world? Moreover, how can we even survive the massive waves of change that are sweeping the world right now? I'm not just talking about political change. We're experiencing fundamental changes in the ways that people communicate and interact with each other. Changes in the ways individual and organizational privacy are viewed, changes in attitudes towards intellectual property, changes in the ways that people are able to go about simply making a living for themselves, changes in the ways that people approach matters of spirituality and belief, and changes in our own physical environment, whose extent we're only really just starting to grasp. Today, there's no point being concerned about either fighting or preserving the status quo. Status quo is a paper butterfly. We're all on board a tiny little fraternal boat here, bobbing around on very rough seas. We need to keep our eyes on the stars and on our instruments and mind the pumps. And it's time to put our Lilliputian quibbles aside. With sweeping change comes danger, certainly, but also opportunity. Evolution is all about survival through adaptation to change. Of course, it is important to our group identity to honor our traditions and our landmarks, but our survival as an active and effective sodality will depend upon our ability to adapt to change. And if we are capable of pulling together and adapting creatively, coherently, and effectively, we may not only survive, but flourish. Love is the law. Love under well.